Welcome back to the Health Physics Society's video series pursuing the truth and promoting transparency regarding the historical foundations of the current radiation protection philosophy based on a linear no-threshold theory for cancer risk assessment. I'm Dr. John Cardarelli, President of the Health Physics Society. In the 18th episode, we learned that the precautionary principle was created as a compromise between those who believed in the linear no-threshold model versus those who believed in the threshold model for cancer risk assessment. In this episode, Dr. Calabrese describes how the results from a mouse study conducted at the Oak Ridge National Labs challenges the linear no-threshold model by demonstrating a genetic repair process. How does the National Academy of Sciences Baer Committee address this? The answer has an interesting twist.
So it was really Lewis who influenced the NCRP to adopt the linear no-threshold theory.
In my opinion, that's correct. And Lewis he changed the direction of the field. I mean, he captured momentum and captured magic in a bottle. Really, his timing was great because he was coming off of the report in Science of these 6 different panels from the National Academy of Sciences, the front page stories in the New York Times and the Wall Street, in the Washington Times and other places, that of the hazards of low levels of radiation. There was all kinds of issues tied into continuing testing, above ground testing of atomic weapons. There was the acute issues, political issues between the Soviet Union and the U.S. and how to resolve these sorts of things, and fear, all kinds of fear in the country at the time. And radiation was one of those big fears. And he really spiked the fear in his paper. And most people are, everybody's concerned with children and transgenerational effects, and you want to protect kids from having any sort of a mutation birth defect. I mean, that's just what parents would be concerned with. But people are also concerned with cancer and the current generation. And he made that transition to cancer and the fear of cancer and certainly even today, I mean, the fear of cancer today is extremely high. And back then it was quite high as well. And so he had come up with a clear and obvious explanation and a predictor. And so this was pretty amazing. And he was challenging government policy. And so he got the appointment right after all his publicity to serve on this committee. And that committee was very significant because it was the first to make a recommendation. And it's a prestigious committee, so people are going to fall in line after that. And I'd have to point out that the members on this committee, they had more than one bite at the apple. So if you were on the NCRPM committee, then you may also be on the International Committee for Radiation Protection, or you may be on some other committees, and maybe even on another National Academy committee. But there was many bites at the apple, depending upon who you were, that sort of thing. So this influence could spread quite a bit. Now, the interesting thing here was timing as well. He was making the case that there was no such thing as repair, that in fact every dose was going to be harmful, that the cumulative dose of the piggybank model was really the model that Muller had, and that was really it. And despite all the criticisms that I laid out on him, this was what prevailed. Now, the agreement in writing to go forward recommending LNT, in my evaluation of the records of the NCRPM, was that this occurred at a meeting in late December of 1958, around December 29, 1930. And it was not published officially in the peer-reviewed, so to speak, literature until 1960, about a little bit more than a year later, in the journal Science. It's a prominent place, and that's where it was. But the decision in writing was actually, right at the end of 1958.
Recorded in their minutes.
That's right. Now, the interesting thing for me was that on December 18th, 10 days or so before this agreement was reached, William Russell, who was on the Bayer genetics panel and a researcher at Oak Ridge National Labs, publishes a groundbreaking paper in the journal Science. And in it, what he claims is, and what he shows, is that in fact something like genetic repair does exist, showed it in the mouse model, and it occurred in both males and females. And it was striking. And the New York Times at that time was on strike. And so what happened was a Pulitzer Prize writer who covered all kinds of radiation issues wrote a front page story and a very substantial story in the Buffalo Times. It's a very, very substantial thing, but it could have been, should have been in the New York Times. But this was the right writer. He was a Pulitzer Prize writer who did radiation things. And it gave a lot of publicity to Oak Ridge and to William Russell. Now, this was challenging a central belief of his radiation genetics community. And I got communicate, and I wondered, well, how would Hermann Muller feel about this? Because Muller had always argued the exact opposite. There was no such thing as repair. It was accumulative. All damage was not repairable. And so I obtained all the letters between Muller and Bill Russell during this time period and after that time period. And the interesting thing was that, guess what, that Russell contacted Muller to alert him to the fact that his paper had been accepted and would be coming out relatively soon in the journal Science, and that he attempted to put it in context, sent him a copy of the paper, then tried to lessen the impact or the implications. He said, now, I can tell you that people within Oak Ridge, certainly physicians and so forth, have seen these data, and they see that, well, this is going to mean that there are safe levels of radiation and so forth. But I've tried to straighten them out that they're overinterpreting these data and they're going too far. And so he was trying to placate Muller so that Muller, I don't think, would be either too attacking in the rebuttal to him, and to just try to calm the old man down.
That seems rather curious, that he would be sort of taking the tack that the data doesn't really support what it clearly supports.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I think that one has to somehow put on almost like the clinical psychiatrist hat when you're looking at these interactions, because there's a lot of jockeying between these leading researchers, and they have strong feelings. They have policy perspectives. They have their own individual research career perspectives. They're trying to mesh those. There are age differences. And at the same time, William Russell is married to an outstanding young woman geneticist, Liane Russell, who was the match of anyone in terms of genetics, as ultimately her career would show. But she was 13 years younger than Russell. And so I think at the same time, I'm just trying to piece this together myself, and I'm thinking that he's trying to protect not only himself, but he's really trying to protect his wife, and who is just starting off on her career in certain ways. And so what happens is that Muller responds by picking up on this, trying to soften the impact. But he takes it as an opening, saying, yeah, and there'll be people who really try to take advantage of this and really push it too far and make something out of it that it isn't. And so he, in a way, he let Muller blow off some steam. And at the same time, this is quite interesting to me. I have a letter, one of my many letters between Muller and Altenburg, his best friend. And Altenburg says, I don't know, this is December 28th. 1928. He said, he called him Joe, because it was Hermann Joseph Muller, people who were close to Muller, they called him Joe, some called him Herman, this sort of thing. But he said, I trust that you saw the recent paper by Russell concerning, what has to be, repair, a real repair process, and this has all kinds of implications, and I want to know what you think about this and how to move forward on it. And so that told me that the genetics community was really aware of what things were happening very quickly, and we're on top of it. And so, I don't know, whether the membership of this NCRPM advisory committee actually saw this December, 18th paper. But if it did, it should have really been like smelling salts to them. It was like an abrupt change in thinking. It had the potential for challenging basic thoughts and challenging the LNT perspective, and it would have been very interesting to then come back and to say, well, hold on a second with this agreement to go towards precautionary principle LNT kind of a situation. Let's have another meeting. Let's take a look at this Russell data. Let's see how it holds up. Does it really have implications? Does it impact this? But they didn't hold it up.
That's very unusual, because it sounds to me that the Russell data basically said this harm is not cumulative. This harm is continuously repaired as it occurs, or repaired over time, so that the whole piggy bank theory of accumulating damage just doesn't hold up.
No, and that's a very significant was a very significant finding from my reading of Russell and so forth. The finding was so significant that I understand that he was nominated a number of times for the Nobel Prize. I never got it, obviously, but the work was that striking and set a whole new course of action. And in fact, within 2 weeks of this report, Muller switched his laboratory over out in Indiana and started to take a look at whether there was such thing as this dose rate and repair within his Drosophila, and he found it. And so he did find it. Yes.
Did he publish on that?
He did, and as it turns out, now Muller's getting towards his latter years. Now Muller, this is now 1959, 1960. Muller will die in 1967. And Muller, they did confirm and extend the work of Russell into his model of Drosophila. I would have to say that his work didn't proceed very well, not nearly as well as Russell's. And I have a feeling that it was probably related to the fact that his health wasn't the greatest, and he was getting towards the end of his career, and it didn't proceed as quickly, but along those lines, and there were no real major achievements with Russell. With Muller when it came to, but he was the first to show that this sort of repair took place within Drosophila based upon him jumping on it right away. And
because Russell had used mice, is that?
That's right. And in fact, on Bayer too, when they were putting out their final report, and this was interesting, and this is 1960, kind of a report of this committee, and in it they said they had to say, well, what's of significance has happened since 1956? That's when they had the last one, and so they tried to summarize certain things, and the person who was writing it didn't put in that Russell had discovered repair. And so Russell saw this, and so didn't Hollander at Oak Ridge. And so right at the very end of this, just when it was going to go final, they had to contact George Beadle and say, listen, this is like this major thing, and what's important in the last 4 years, and you don't mention the most important thing that's in 4 years. And so he gave them the permission to make all these additions to the Bayer report, and they threw in Muller's contribution to that whole process. So the Bayer committee in 1960, they acknowledged that in fact genetic damage was repairable.
Thank you for watching the 19th episode on the historical foundations of the linear no-threshold theory, where we learned that the near final draft of the second report from the genetics panel of the Baer Committee in 1960 excluded Bill and Liane Russell's genetic repair findings from their study on mice at Oak Ridge National Labs. After a series of letters between Russell, Muller, Hollander, and others, George Beadle and Howard Andrews, the executive secretary of the Baer Committee, incorporate this important observation in the final report, thus acknowledging the existence of genetic repair, which challenges the belief in linear relationship between radiation dose and cancer. In our next episode, you'll learn why the belief in the linear no-threshold model and developing government policies survived this challenge. The HPS is a trusted source of radiation information. We're a scientific organization, and as is offered with a scientific peer review process, viewers are encouraged to send comments or suggested corrections to factcheck@hps.org, and be sure to include your sources so that we may correct the record if necessary. If any changes are made, they will appear at the end of this episode. Please visit our Ask the Experts website to ask questions or seek answers to common radiation-related questions, and view our fact sheets. We also have official position statements that can be found at hps.org. Finally, if you wish to join the Home for Radiation Protection Professionals, please visit the link below. We welcome you.